I don't want to do that. Okay. Awesome. So we're going to go through these problems here. And I'm going to do it in two ways. The first way that we learn is substitution. So I'm going to start it that way. When I'm looking at my blue and my orange equations, there are multiple ways I can solve this with substitution. I can get the blue x, the blue y, or the orange x incredibly easily. I'm going to choose to do the orange x for no other reason than I think they're all the same. That one just pops out at me as being a little bit easier. So I'm just going to do it. I have x plus 2y equals negative 8. I'm going to isolate my x, so I'm going to subtract 2y. I have x equals negative 2y minus 8. Okay? So now I can substitute what my x is into my blue equation. Remember, you can't do it into the same equation we pulled from. You have to do it from the other equation. So if x is negative 2y minus 8, instead of x, I'm going to write that. Negative 2y minus 8 minus y equals 1. All I did was I took the blue x, and instead of writing x, I wrote my new brown number here. Now I can just solve for y. I have negative 2y's. I'm subtracting another y, so that's going to give me negative 3y's minus 8 equals 1. I'm going to add 8, negative 3y equals 9. I'm going to divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. So I now know that y equals negative 3. Awesome. I'm halfway there. So now all I have to do is take my y is negative 3, substitute it into any equation. I can substitute it into my blue, I can substitute it into my orange, or I can even substitute it into this brown one right here. I'll go ahead and plug it into the blue because that looks pretty easy. So I have x minus a negative 3 equals 1. Whenever I subtract a negative number, that's the same as adding that number. So it's x plus 3 equals 1. If I subtract 3, I have x equals a negative 2. Okay? So now I know what my y is, I know what my x is, but the way that we always write our answers is, remember, these are two lines that are crossing. It's a point, so our answer is negative 2, comma, negative 3. Put it in parentheses, box it up, and we are good. And that is the substitution way of solving this problem. Questions? We're good? Alrighty. So now I'm going to do elimination. Alright, I don't need quite as much space for elimination because it goes a little bit quicker. First thing I got to do is I got to check to make sure everything's aligned. My x's are above my x's, my y's are above my y's, my equal's above my equal, and my constant's above my constant. Sure enough, that's true. Now when I look at them, I'm seeing, okay, if I were to add these, what would I get? I would get 2x. That doesn't eliminate. I would get 1y. That doesn't eliminate. So I'm going to have to modify one of my equations. What I'm going to do, what looks easiest to me to modify, is to look at my top equation, and I'm going to multiply this by a negative 1. That will cause my x's to eliminate. So I'm going to rewrite it. So negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 1 times negative y will be a positive y. And negative 1 times 1 will be negative 1. So my green equation here is just my modified blue equation. Now that I have them, I see that my x's will eliminate. That's why I multiplied it by negative 1. And I can do this step now. I'm going to add these together. X plus negative x is 0. That's why we did it. So I'm not going to write anything here because it's 0. We don't need to add 0 to things. 2y plus a y is going to be 3y's. And then negative 8 plus a negative 1, well, that's going to be negative 9. I'm going to divide by 3, y equals negative 3. And sure enough, you can see, yeah, we got y equals negative 3 when we did it the other way. Now that I know that y is negative 3, I just need to plug that into any equation, much like I did here. This time I'll do it in the orange equation just to show that it's true. So I'm going to have x plus 2 times negative 3 equals negative 8. X minus 6 equals negative 8. Add 6, add 6. X equals negative 2. Sure enough, that checks out with what we did earlier. And so my final answer is negative 2, comma, negative 3 as a point. Box it up. Put a ribbon on it. Merry Christmas.
Ho, ho, ho. Flower.
It's kind of a flower. You're right. My apologies.
I'm always right.
Cool. Do you have a question?
He was wondering where you got the negatives from.
Right here?
Yeah.
So what that blue or that green step, that's the hard step. That's always the hard step when it comes to elimination, is you have to see what you have to multiply one of the equations by. I got the negative 1 because I knew that if x were negative, a negative 1 plus 1 would eliminate. And I would end up with 0 x's. You could have multiplied this by 2, so that you would have negative 2y plus 2y equals 0, and then your y's would have eliminated. Either of those would have worked. There are multiple ways to do it. That's just the way that I saw. All right. Let's look at another problem, and we'll go through that as well. Any questions on this? Yeah?
For the test, is it going to ask you to make it to answer one of them in a substitution way and answer some of them in elimination?
Elimination, yes. Yeah. And actually the hardest problem on the test, what it'll do is it'll give you like the blue and the orange, and it'll say solve it 2 ways. It'll say solve it either with graphing, elimination, and substitution. Pick 2 of those 3. Okay, so you gotta be comfortable with at least one of these, preferably both. All right, number 2. Let's try this one again. Let's do substitution. All right. When I'm looking at this one for substitution, my orange looks like the easiest because there's a x with just a 1 coefficient, so I'm going to manipulate that equation first. So I have x plus 3y equals negative 12. I'm going to get x by itself by subtracting 3y from both sides. So I have x equals negative 3y minus 12. Awesome. Now I'm going to take that. I manipulated the orange equation, so I have to put that into the blue equation.
What is substitution, correct?
I'm using substitution, yes. So 2, and now instead of this x, I'm going to write what x equals. In this case, it's negative 3y minus 12. Subtract another 3y equals 3. I'm going to distribute my 2. Do I need to slow down a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to slow down a little bit. From here, I need to distribute that 2 into that parentheses.
Well, you kind of just combine the 2 equations into one.
I mean, that's kind of what substitution is you manipulate one equation for one of your variables, and then you put that in for that variable. So it is kind of like you combine them.
So it's adding it all together.
Not exactly adding it all together. It's manipulating for x. See, look what we did here. We got x by itself. And so if x is negative 3y minus 12, this x is negative 3y minus 12. Okay? So I do 2 times negative 3y, that becomes negative 6y. I do 2 times negative 12, that becomes minus 24. And then I'm subtracting another 3y equals 3. I'm going to combine my like terms. So I get negative 9y's minus 24 equals 3. I'm going to get my y term by itself, so I'll add 24. Get a negative 9y equals, what is that, 27?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll scroll up. Sorry, guys. Divide by negative 9. Divide by negative 9. And so y equals a negative 3. Cool. It kind of looks like a 4. That's supposed to be a 9. All right. So now that I have y equals negative 3, I plug that into any equation. It could be the blue, could be the orange, could even be this brown. And then I'll get my x. Actually, I really like doing it into this brown equation here because you can see it's already set up x equals something, right? And we're looking for our x. So I really like to just plug it into this equation right here. Because look at what happens. I have x equals negative 3. My y is negative 3, so I'll write that in parentheses, minus 12. Oh, now I scrolled too far up. Negative 3 times negative 3 becomes a positive 9 minus 12. 9 minus 12 is negative 3. So my final answer is the point negative 3 comma negative 3. Box it up. Put a bow on it. Merry Christmas. Happy birthday. All right. Questions on that? Now we're going to do it the super awesome elimination method. So I'm going to rewrite my equation. So I got 2x minus 3y equals 3. Rewrite my system, I should say, because it's multiple equations. Multiple equations are systems. Okay. And so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check to make sure everything's aligned. My x's are above my x's, yes. My y's are above my y's, yes. Equal signs above my equal sign, yes. Constants above my constant, yes. Now I'm going to see if anything would eliminate if I added it together. 2 plus 1 is 3. That doesn't eliminate, so my x's won't work. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. My y's will eliminate without me having to do anything, so I'm just going to do that. So I'm going to add my equations together. 2 plus 1 is 3x. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. It eliminates, so I'm not going to write 0. I just know that it eliminates. And then finally, 3 plus negative 12 becomes negative 9. Divide by 3. X equals negative 3. Sure enough, that checks out with our other equation, or our other method. So now all I have to do is take that, plug it into either equation. I'll choose the orange one for no reason other than it's closest to me. So I have negative 3 plus 3y equals negative 12. I want to get my y term by itself, so I'll add 3, 3y equals negative 9. Divide by 3, divide by 3. Y equals negative 3. Sure enough, that checks out with what we did before, and our answer is, of course, negative 3, negative 3. Just like it was here. Okay? Multiple paths to victory. This one was nice because our elimination already lined up. We didn't have to manipulate. Right? They're not always going to be this nice, but when they are, recognize it and go for it. Next problem. We'll start with substitution. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. All right. Again, either of these works really well because I see that I have a 1 coefficient on my x and on this y. I'll do the blue equation. I'll isolate x. There's no real reason for me to do that other than it looks easy. So I'll start there. So I have x plus y equals negative 2. I want to get my x by itself, so I'll subtract y. X equals negative y minus 2. Easy enough. I could have just as easily done y. I could have just as easily done x in my orange equation. Either way works. But I've done this now. So now I'm going to substitute it into the orange equation, right? You always have to substitute it into the other equation. So if x is negative y minus 2, that's what I'm going to write here instead of x. Negative y minus 2. And then I just copy it down. Minus 2y equals negative 8. Once I'm here, I just need to combine my like terms. I have a negative y. I'm subtracting 2 more y's. That puts me at negative 3y. And then I have a minus 2 equals negative 8. From here, I just want to get my y term by itself, so I'll add 2. Negative 3y is going to equal a negative 6. Isolate my variable by dividing by negative 3. Thank you. Y equals negative 6 divided by negative 3. That's going to be a positive 2. Boom, boom. All right. Now that we have y, we just need to find x. Again, I really recommend doing it into this brown equation just because x is already isolated for us. And so that's what I'm going to do. X equals a negative 2 minus 2. So negative 2 minus 2, that becomes negative 4. So my point is negative 4, comma 2. That's my answer. Put a bow on it. All right. Guys, look at how much writing I'm doing, okay? Look at how much writing I'm doing on each and every one of these problems. Okay, write this much for each of these problems. You know, when I'm cruising around, when you guys are working on this, one of the things that I see is you guys are trying to skip steps, which I appreciate you trying to be as efficient as possible, but write everything down. Like, there's a lot of things going on. And if you don't write it down, you may miss something, or you may misremember something. Okay? Elimination. Go back there. X plus y equals negative 2. Let's write our orange. X minus 2y equals negative 8. All right. My x's are above my x's. My y's are above my y's. Equals above equals. Constants above constant. I can start. 1 plus 1 is 2. That's not going to work. 1 plus a negative 2 is negative 1. That's not going to work. So I'm going to have to manipulate my equation. There are multiple things I can do. I can multiply my blue equation by negative 1. That would cause this to be a negative x, which would cause my x's to cancel. I could also multiply it by 2, which would cause this to be 2y. 2y minus 2 would be 0, causing my y's to cancel. Last time I multiplied by a negative 1. This time I'll do it this method. I'll multiply by 2, and we'll see how that works. So I'm going to multiply this by 2. I'm just going to rewrite it down here in the green. So 2x plus 2y equals negative 4. Every single term you have to multiply by 2. The x, the y, and the constant. It's not just the term that you're eliminating, it's every term of the equation. Now that I have that, my orange and my green can eliminate. 1 plus 2 is 3x. 2 plus negative 2 plus 2 is 0, that's why we did it. Negative 8 plus a negative 4 is negative 12. Divide by 3. X equals negative 4. That checks out with what we did here, which is awesome. Now I just plug it into any equation. I'll do the orange one. So I have negative 4 minus 2y equals negative 8. Get my y term by itself, so I'll add my constant term. Negative 2y equals negative 4. Isolate my variable, y equals 2. And sure enough, negative 4, 2 is my answer. Put a big old bow on it. And that's what I got the other way too. Okay, team. Last one. And I'm hoping this repetition helps. Like this is just seeing it over and over and over and over again, seeing it the proper way to do it, the cleanest way to do it, so that when you have to do this on your own, you guys are set. Number 4, substitution. This one's trickier. I don't have a single variable. I don't have a variable with a coefficient of 1 here, which is really unfortunate because that makes everything easier. So I'm going to have to pick a variable that I want to isolate. In this case, I think I'll do, gosh, I don't know. I think I'll do y in my orange equation. So 2x minus 3y equals 6. I want to get y by itself, so I'll subtract 2x. Negative 3y equals negative 2x plus 6. Divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. Y equals, and remember when we do this, whenever we have two terms being divided, we do our little heart. So I'll end up with negative 2 divided by negative 3, which is 2/3 x. 6 divided by negative 3 is going to be negative 2. Okay. So I got y by itself. I can now plug that into my blue equation. So I end up with 7x minus 3 times 2/3 x minus 2 equals negative 9. Going to distribute negative 3 times 2/3. Well, my 3's will cancel, giving me a negative 2x. Negative 3 times negative 2 is going to be a positive 6. Scoot it up. Thanks. Combine my like terms. I got my x's here. 7 minus 2 is just 5. Get my x term by itself by subtracting 6. 5x equals negative 15. Divide by 5, divide by 5. X equals negative 3. Ooh, that was a lot of work. But I'll take that negative 3 and I'll plug it in here. Yeah, I'll go all catty corner. That'll help. Y equals 2/3. This time x is negative 3 minus 2. My 3's will cancel, giving me negative 2 minus 2, giving me negative 4. So I end up with my x is negative 3, my y is negative 4. Put a bow on it. It's an ugly bow. Finally, our last one. And I hope what you guys are seeing is that elimination, while more complicated,
It's faster.
is a lot faster, right? And so there's a real payoff to being able to do it. All right, so now I got to make sure everything's lined up. X is above x's, yep. Y is above y's, yep. Equal above equal, yes. Constant above constant, you got it. So now I need to see what happens when I add them. This becomes 9, that doesn't eliminate. This becomes negative 6, that doesn't eliminate. But I see here that I could probably just multiply this by negative 1. It flipped the sign here, which would cause it to eliminate. So I'll do that. Negative 1 times 7 becomes negative 7x. Negative 1 times negative 3 becomes a positive 3y. And negative 1 times negative 9 becomes a positive 9. So my green equation is just my blue equation multiplied by negative 1. Combine my terms. 2 minus 7 is negative 5x. 3, or negative 3 plus 3 is 0, so I'm not going to write anything. 6 plus 9 is 15. Divide by negative 5. X equals negative 3. Sure enough, that checks out with what we did before. Take negative 3. I'll plug it into the blue equation. 7 times negative 3 minus 3y equals negative 9. That becomes negative 21 minus 3y equals negative 9. Add 21, add 21. Negative 3y is going to equal, what is that, 14? No. 12. 12 divided by negative 3 is negative 4. Sure enough, negative 3, negative 4 is my answer, just as it was here. What's our confidence level? Thumbs up, most confident, thumbs sideways. Geez, Victor, it's easy when you do it, but when I'm left alone with it, sometimes the kitten dies. Thumbs down, this is all mysterious. Okay, I'm happy to see thumbs sideways. I'm really glad to see thumbs up. Your homework for today is just one sheet. This is 2.11. It's a word problem, and it's 2 systems. And what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to work together on those. Make sure that you guys get those down. And we had a long weekend. If you need some time to go back and look over things, raise your hand, ask me for help. I'll be coming around and help you guys. But let's do it.